According to figures released on Wednesday, 31 Israeli soldiers have been killed during the Gaza ground offensive and more than 260 injured. Gaza officials say over 10,000 people have been killed by Israeli forces since October the 7th, 40% of them children. The Defence Minister Yoav Gallant said Israeli troops were tightening the stranglehold around the city of Gaza.
Gaza is the biggest terror base ever built by mankind. This whole city is one big terror base. Underground, kilometers of tunnels that connect to hospitals and schools connect to each other. They include communication rooms, ammunition storages, places to sleep and all of it, in order to act as a basis of terror from which they can hurt the citizens of Israel and soldiers of the IDF.
The Israeli army released a video of what it said was the location and destruction of tunnels in Gaza used by Hamas. Remember, Gaza's narrow web of streets is doubled underground by a dense tunnel network known to the Israeli troops as the Gaza Metro. Israeli forces gave a small group of foreign reporters a rare view of their advance, driving them along sandy routes churned by tank tracks to the fringes of Gaza City. Blackened windows, shattered bedrooms, pockmarked walls. Israeli strikes in some cases have demolished entire city blocks. Hamas's military arm, the Iz ad-Din al-Qassam brigade, showed what they said was close fighting with the Israeli forces on the streets of Gaza. Hamas has accused the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees of colluding with Israel in the forced displacement of residents in Gaza. Thousands of Palestinians are fleeing south from Gaza City on foot, in some cases carrying nothing but the clothes on their back. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs stated about 15,000 people fled on Tuesday, compared with 5,000 on Monday and 2,000 on Sunday. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has called on Israel not to reoccupy Gaza once its war with Hamas ends. Israeli government stated it was still very premature to discuss post-war scenarios, that Gaza would be demilitarised and must never again become a terror nest. Well, we're now joined by our correspondent Jody Cohen, live from Rana in Israel. Jody, let's firstly start with those comments from Antony Blinken in terms of Israel occupying Gaza once this conflict is over. What could a post-war Gaza look like?
Hi, Oliver. So yes, at the G7 meeting, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, he actually said that the post-war Gaza should be governed by Palestinians. And a member of the Israeli War Cabinet, Ron Dermer, in an interview with UK media, he agreed that the Palestinians should govern Gaza, but not Hamas, and said that the Palestinians should have all the powers to govern themselves with none of the powers to threaten Israel. Now, Blinken and PA President Abbas discussed the Palestinian Authority, which, remember, governs the West Bank, from having a role in Gaza. And Abbas said that he would only take responsibility for Gaza as part of a comprehensive political solution, including East Jerusalem. Now, it's unlikely that the Israeli government would agree to that. There's a feeling in Israel that A, Israel has a historic right to Jerusalem, and B, that the more land Israel gives away, the less secure the country becomes. There's also been talk about a role for Arab countries. So remember, Egypt ruled Gaza before Israel, and the US reportedly made a proposal to Egypt to run Gazan security until the Palestinian Authority is ready, and that's reportedly been rejected rejected by Egypt's president. There's also been talk about international organisations or an international peacekeeping force. And in the meantime, the US and the UK have suggested that Israel will need to have an initial security responsibility in Gaza. And in an interview with US media, Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed with that position.
Of course, a long way to go till we're talking about post-war scenario. Let's actually go to the current situation and what is happening with the hostage negotiations.
Right, so we've been hearing that Qatar and Egypt are reportedly involved in negotiations with Hamas regarding the release of perhaps 10 to 15 hostages in exchange for a pause in fighting of perhaps 1 to 3 days. Now remember, 240 people, including the elderly, differently abled, women, children and babies, have been held in Gaza now for more than 1 month since Hamas's 7th of October massacre in Israel. And you can see there are posters like this raising awareness of the plight of the hostages across Israel and indeed across in many countries of the world too. Now, President Biden had asked Prime Minister Netanyahu to consider pauses in the fighting. And at that G7 meeting of foreign ministers on Wednesday, they called for humanitarian pauses to speed up the distribution of aid. In an interview with US media, Netanyahu confirms that there have been and could be further hours-long pauses to enable aid to enter or hostages to leave. But it's not clear what will happen with regard to these negotiations. On the one hand, Israel would want hostages to be able to get out. On the other hand, many security experts are suggesting that days-long pauses could give Hamas time to reposition themselves. That could prolong the fighting and put others at risk.
Jodie Cohen joining us live from Rana in Israel. Many thanks for now.